In the matter of the murder of Catherine Daviau, the Montreal police would rather the public not know precisely how she died. But I'll tell you right now that Catherine Daviau was stabbed repeatedly in the neck and stomach, bound with zip ties on the bed of her Rosemont apartment, the room set on fire using her perfume as an accelerant, December 11th, 2008. This is Who Killed Teresa. The following is the official notice from the Montreal Police, SPVM, on the death of Catherine Daviau. Thursday, December 11th, 2008, Catherine Daviau, 26 years old, a young woman, was found lifeless in her apartment in the Rosemont district during an intervention by the Montreal Fire Department at her home located at 5165 5th Avenue. Following a call to 911 from a neighbor who had noticed the fire. Following the discovery of the body, the Montreal firefighters called on the SPVM. During the response, the police quickly found that the young woman had been the victim of a murder. Catherine Daviau was found on the bed of her room. She bore signs of violence. Investigators from the Major Crime Section of the SPVM suspect that the attacker started the fire to hide his crimes. I'm a businessman from Quebec. Has anyone seen albino alligator? I'm a businessman from Quebec. All right, we continue. During the investigation, the police learned that the day Catherine Daviau had worked all day at a company on the West Island of Montreal, as she had been doing for several years. After her shift, around 4:30 p.m., she left her work to return home by car, taking Highway 40 eastbound. Given the heavy traffic that day, police estimate that she would have arrived home about an hour later. The investigation also reveals that the victim had used her cellular device shortly after 5:30 p.m. to communicate with an acquaintance. A neighbor called 911 around 7:07 p.m. When the firefighters arrived, all the exits were closed and locked, which suggests that the victim let her attacker in and that there was no call of a break-in. Given the victim's likely arrival at her home and the time of the call to 911, the perpetrator's window of opportunity was a little over an hour. As part of the SPVM investigation for several years, Catherine Daviau's family, neighbors, friends, and acquaintances were met by the police, but to date, no solid investigative lead has been identified in order to elucidate the gratuitous murder of this uneventful young woman, brutally assaulted inside her home in the Rosemont district. Through this process, the SPVM is asking the public for assistance in order to identify the perpetrator of this violent crime. Anyone with information is asked to contact the SPVM, either by dialing 911, by going to a neighborhood police station, through our website, or anonymously by contacting InfoCrime Montréal at 514-393-1123. Each information received will be processed and analyzed. The case will remain open until it is resolved. I'm a businessman from Quebec. I work for the government of Quebec. Vigo, man of 1,000 voices. Quebec was not one of them. Some things you can deduce from this information. 5165 Fifth Avenue. That's a nice area in the Rosemont district. It's wedged between Park Extension and Hochelaga Maisonneuve in the east. It's east of the plateau in Montreal. It's a nice area, man. I'd live there. I would live there. And it's where she lived. It's in the shadow of the headquarters of the Sûreté du Québec, the SQ. Though, we're not talking about the SQ today. We're going to talk today about a couple of municipal forces. And I don't think, with the exception of last week, we've really talked about the SQ all year long. Somebody said on social media, I like the way you always knock the SQ. I haven't been doing it for a while, but we'll get to them later in the year. The year's not out, man. We got 4 months, plenty of time for those goofballs. It's evident that this notice is made years after the 2008 murder of Catherine. Exactly when, we don't know. There's a short video that the SPVM made that goes along with the notice, and that video was posted on YouTube in December 2017. I'll put it on the website, teresaallure.com, TheresaAllure.com. So possibly this new push is done 9 years after the murder. And that seems about right. As the Montreal police, they created their cold case unit around December 2018, or at least announced it 2018. And we've talked about how to date the SPVM has only posted 4 cold cases on that website, even though they have a portfolio of about 800 under their investigative mandate. Catherine Daviau is one of the 4. She's one of the lucky 4. And for a suspect here, they lean heavily on Catherine's friends and family to develop clues, but they come up empty, tellingly. And when that happens, the difficulty is the case becomes more and more reliant on police investigation. It's easy pickings working from the family outwards, but what I believe they do not want to face up to the fact that this is a quasi stranger homicide. They do not want to address that. So there's a suspect out there in these cases, and only the expertise of the police is going to find that suspect. But I'm getting ahead of myself. One final thing, the case of Catherine Daviau has never been covered by Montreal's English language newspaper, the Montreal Gazette. And we've seen this happens. This can happen. French papers tend to stick to French victims. If the victim's family is French, it's an easier interview, and vice versa. Same applies for English papers. But in this case, even CBC Montreal has done very little since her death, 2008. So we're approaching 14, 15 years. CBC Montreal's done basically what they've done over the years is to reproduce Montreal Police SPVM press releases. Most of the in-depth reporting on this case comes from the newspaper La Presse or Journal de Montréal and its agents, its media agents. And a couple of, maybe last summer, I questioned the Montreal Gazette about this. Why they never covered it. And they were kind of surprised that they hadn't covered it. It kind of caught them off guard, really. And they didn't really give me a satisfactory answer, other than to say that they're very busy. And that's kind of true, I mean, right? I think they've got 2 people covering crime now. We've been through this. Paul Cherry, who's an excellent, we've said this, an excellent journalist, but he's been reduced by the Gazette to being virtually an ambulance chaser. He hangs out at the courts. He tells you in the paper what's going on in the courts. It's an old-fashioned model of journalism dating from the turn of the century. And then they got one other guy who occasionally, when he's not writing about hockey or lifestyle pieces, they might throw him a bone and let him do a piece of investigative journalism. But it seems especially odd to me that Catherine Daviau would not be covered by the English press. My guess is she was fluently bilingual. Her mother's maiden name is Schneider. So we're talking about Catherine Daviau, beautiful young early 20s, mid-20s woman, murdered in downtown Montreal. In March 2018, the Montreal police, they provide updates on the case, presumably as a kind of 10th anniversary push to try to advance the cold case. And in the TVA program, JE, they disclose that the tie wraps or the zip ties were used to restrain Catherine. They even go to the extraordinary step of releasing crime scene photos of the exhibit evidence, the zip ties, with the evidence marker numbering the piece of evidence. I've put that on the website. Police inform the public that this is a definite indication that the murder was planned. Fair. I suppose further reinforcing that the assailant could have worked within that under an hour timeline, a very aggressive timeline, if they had premeditated their actions. The SPVM in this 10th anniversary piece further disclosed that they have physical evidence left at the crime scene, but they do not say whether that is fingerprints or DNA. It becomes fairly obvious that it's DNA when in their next breath they disclose that the assailant smoked Players filtered cigarettes. For the first time, Catherine's younger sister, Geneviève, is interviewed about the murder. And she says, we already knew that Catherine would have returned from her work around 6 p.m. She lived alone in an apartment on Fifth Avenue at 7:07 p.m. Interesting that she gets the timing. She didn't say 7-ish, or she says 7:07, so that's directly from the police report. At 7:07, a neighbor called 911 to report a fire. It doesn't leave a lot of time anyway. I still can't believe that no one noticed someone or something fishy that evening. After smashing down the apartment door, firefighters found Catherine's body naked on her bed. It is here that investigators also revealed that the man, and it's the first time they disclose it was a man, presumably also derived from this cigarette butt DNA evidence. The man used Catherine's perfume as an accelerator to start the fire, again releasing a photo of the crime scene evidence. And this is investigator Antonio Paradiso of the SPVM. It tells us that the aggressor arrived on site with a plan already made. He knew what he wanted to do, that he wanted to tie up the victim to control her. So it is clear that there is premeditation. This guy may have followed or observed Catherine in her routine, perhaps a few days or some time before, to see her routine. The SPVM then they go on to explain the nature of a cold case in the pitter patter that we've all become very, very familiar with. So this is the commander of the Montreal Police, Vincent Rozon, the murder files remain active for 2 years. If after 2 years the investigation has not succeeded, in the jargon, we will say that it is a cold case. Then the file will be put on hold, and my investigators will revise these files sporadically with the new information that comes in. These kind of files, like Catherine's, are never closed. And we all know how much that's reassuring. At the start of the investigation, the police refused to say whether Catherine had been sexually assaulted. But by 2018, they confirm it. But they refused to disclose the cause of her death. This is Paradiso again. It's important for investigators to keep certain items confidential, in secret. We call that holdback. If it is information that the suspect left at the scene and it's not mentioned outside the file, if one day some people talk about something that has never been said in the public, we will know that this is good information and we will treat it as a priority. SPVM investigator Paradiso. Well, I'm telling you right now that Catherine Daviau was stabbed repeatedly in the throat and stomach. As reported in her coroner's report released over 2 years after her murder in 2010. It's not very good hold back evidence, investigator Paradiso, if that evidence is readily available to the public. And the coroner invites you to disclose it. Here, I will translate for you what the Quebec coroner sent me. Mr. John Allure, enclosed you will find the coroner's investigation report on the death of Catherine Daviau. Please note that the coroner's reports are public documents. They can therefore be given to anyone who requests it, including media representatives. Please accept, Mr. John Allure, the expression of our distinguished feelings. So clearly, a full invitation to open the barn door and share this information, which I gladly do. Here we go. I swear, the Journal de Montréal, they do good work in these types of stories, in disclosing information to the public. But, it's all told through the lens of the Quebec police. And in this way, the JDM's relationship with the SPVM is no better than, Jack Webb's Dragnet in the 50s and 60s. The popular crime television series was practically produced by the LAPD, and such is the relationship through the years between the Journal de Montréal and the Quebec police. The last big thing about the Daviau case so in December 2018, the Montreal police announced that they have managed to develop a composite photo of Catherine Daviau's assailant using advanced DNA techniques. The SPVM sent a DNA sample of the suspect found at the crime scene, presumably from the cigarette butt of the player's filtered cigarette, to the United States to like a lab to draw a composite image using a groundbreaking technique that is now called phenotyping. It is a method of analyzing DNA samples that make it possible to obtain probable physical characteristics of an unidentified person, explained commander of the major crime section of the SPVM, Pascal Côté. The color of hair, eyes, skin, and certain Morphological characteristics of the face are among the elements that can emerge from such an analysis. This composite was shown to Catherine Daviau's entourage, but the SPVM refused to make the image public. Again, this is Pascal Coté. The composite will not be made public. It could mislead the population and even the investigators in error. It should be understood that a robot portrait produced by the testimony of a person has much more value today with the technologies that are within our reach. A witness sees the length of the hair, the age of the person, certain characteristics that cannot be determined by a DNA sample. A composite portrait drawn from a DNA sample will be more generic. The composite portrait drawn from the DNA cannot, among other things, reflect the age of the suspect, goes on. Pascal Coté explains this. At the time in 2018, 10 years after the Catherine Daviau murder, detectives were still investigating the hypothesis that Catherine Daviau may have been killed by someone she knew. And it's particularly for this reason that they showed the composite portrait only to the friends, the young woman friends in Catherine's social circle. I guess on the one hand, this is understandable, but again, I find it troubling. The SPVM had been working the same hypothesis for a decade, and they'd gotten nowhere. So why did they think limiting the composite to a small circle of friends would get them any further? It's the easiest investigative approach, but after 10 years, not really the one required. After 10 years, if you haven't gotten anywhere, chances are you're not gonna get anywhere. The SPVM told someone I know acquainted with this case that they are convinced Daviau was murdered by désertion, meaning someone she knew. Now, I get why they think this, but operating only on this theory is quite frankly, it's absurd. If you remember in the episode Why Murders Are Unsolved, Montreal police originally assumed the Wayne Bowden murders were committed by someone the victims knew well, because the assailant gained easy access to the victims' apartments. It wasn't until after Bowden was apprehended that police realized Bowden wasn't a close associate of any of the victims. He was a confidence man who barely knew them, but managed to quickly manipulate his way into their lives, proving the Montreal police has a real habit of repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And I cannot believe for a podcast that has never done a feature on Wayne Bowden, that has sworn it doesn't care about Wayne Bowden, has mentioned serial killer Wayne Bowden so much. I think this year alone, he's come up in Wayne Bowden has come up. We might as well just call it the Wayne Bowden Show, right? At this point, Who Killed Teresa? Featuring the vampire killer, Wayne Bowden. Wayne Bowden. Of course, with this this 10th anniversary story, right? The interviews and all of the information is handed directly on a plate to the Journal de Montréal. It's informative, but again, it's very unprofessional, and what they're doing is practicing pure police propaganda. For 50 years, the JDM has been a mouthpiece for whatever message Quebec police want to spin. In my sister's case, it was planning a story about a drug addict, then never visiting the case again. As we've discussed with the Teresa Martin case in 1969, again, the planting of a drug addict story to deflect attention away from the real story that the Montreal police had screwed up in getting too close with biker gangs. These were attempts by the police to draw the public's attention away from a problem, weaponizing the highest circulated newspaper in the province to do so. It's a situation straight out of the 60s American television. This is the city. It was Thursday, December 11th. We were working the night watch out of Bunco Division. My partner is Antonio Paradiso. The boss is Commander Rozon. My name's Friday. You know, I would say when you consider this, don't forget, as I alluded to before, you know, the Journal de Montréal is just an offshoot of Quebecor and its partners who control media operations like TVA, TV Nouvelle, Cano. You know, last week, TVA Sports announced the death of Phil Esposito. Right. They did. Now, as far as I know, Phil is still the color commentator for the Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. It was his brother, Tony, who died. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, TVA Sports wants to be taken seriously as the premier voice, French voice of sports, at least in Canada, if not in the French-speaking world. And they can't get straight the names of two Hockey Hall of Famers. I mean, screwing things up this bad. I mean, that's the kind of bullshit operation that Quebecor is all about. DNA phenotyping is the process of predicting a person's physical appearance and or biographic ancestry for forensic purposes using only genetic information collected from genotyping or DNA sequencing. It's also known as molecular photo fitting. It's believed to have been first used in 2015 to help solve the 2011 murder of Kendra Alston and her 3-year-old daughter. Police in Columbia, South Carolina, issued a press release containing what is thought to be the first composite image to be published entirely on the basis of a DNA sample. And this led to the arrest of Kenneth Kanzatar, who was charged with the murders in 2017. So a relatively rapid arrest. In Canada, the technique is believed to have been first used in 2016 when Windsor police released a composite of the suspect responsible for the abduction and murder of 6-year-old Lubika Topic in 1971. This was the first public release of phenotyping composite outside of the United States, and it's believed to be the oldest case to apply the technology, applying it 40, almost 50 years later. And I guess my question that gets lost, I mean, it's great, right? You know, Journal de Montréal releases this story about this new technique that they're using on Catherine Daviau, and it is really terrific. But there's one begins to ask about the broader question about phenotyping, and which is you know, is any work being done with phenotyping related to solving other cold cases in Quebec? Is the question. Are there plans to test other cold case evidence? There exists male DNA evidence in my sister's case. Are they going to send that sample to the United States for phenotyping? Because I might like some confirmation that after phenotyping, the offender in that composite tends to remarkably resemble Luc Gregoire, who died in Archambault in 2015 after his sentencing for the Calgary murder of Lanny Silva. I have 3 victim rendering composites, 2 from sexual assaults in Sherbrooke, 1 from Montreal, that demonstrate a man remarkably resembling Gregoire was a serial sexual predator active in Quebec in the late 1970s. It would be nice to have genetic confirmation, right, that the DNA sample in my sister's wallet resembles Gregoire, resembles these composites. So it's an expensive technique, I know. So what is the rationale for testing only the Daviau evidence? What about the Teresa Martin case? Shouldn't the method be the oldest cases first are the ones tested? I don't know. Or maybe it's the newest cases while memories are still fresh with people. In some ways, I know I'm being a little overly ambitious for daring to suggest that perhaps there should be a strategic, coordinated effort here in using this groundbreaking, fascinating new technology.
Gives me that first kiss, spontaneous, combustion, spontaneous, combustion. I'm busting right out of my skin. I can't wait to tell everybody.
What about any number of cases? What about Valerie Leblanc? In 2011, Valerie Leblanc was an 18-year-old student at the Cégep Ottawa in Hull. The city of Hull, if you don't know, it's right across the Ottawa River from Canada's capital, Ottawa. In fact, the Ottawa River, it defines the border between the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. For reference, Ottawa/Hull, it's exactly like any twin city, right? And now I'm St. Louis and Kansas City, St. Paul and Minneapolis, right, which are on either sides of the Mississippi. This is exactly the same relationship with Ottawa-Hull. Ottawa-Hull being about 2 hours west of Montreal, northwest. On August 23rd, 2011, Valerie Leblanc's badly beaten and burned body was discovered in the woods behind the campus of Cégep Ottawa. 2 students found her body around 4 p.m. in the afternoon near the bike path behind the school's campus Gabriel Roy. As reported by CBC News, Josiane Tardif was having a cigarette on the path with her friends. This place was a popular spot for local teenagers. When she and her friends came upon the body. She was lying down on her front. Her legs were broken, said Tardif. At the time, we didn't believe it was real. The students originally thought the body was a mannequin until they moved closer. We kind of smelled the dead body burning. That's when we realized what we saw. It was really excruciating, she said. Leblanc's body was transported to Montreal to process the autopsy. At the time, Gatineau police, this is the Gatineau force, said the death was considered suspicious. So the Gatineau police force would be a small municipal police force patrolling Hull and the surrounding Quebec region. The location where the body was found was near a spot where in March 2010, a woman was found badly burned in what police later called an attempted suicide. The similarity of the incidents led some at the school and family members of Leblanc to speculate they were connected. But police said the 2010 incident was still considered attempted suicide, while admitting that Leblanc's suspicious death was not suicide. 2 days later, Gatineau police announced that Valerie Leblanc died from head trauma. They refused to comment further on the case, but they said it did not appear the body had been moved from another location. Patrols consisting of the Gatineau Police Bicycle Squad and the RCMP began to canvass the grounds and paths of the college campus. Police said they had no suspects in the homicide investigation. Police then announced that they had opened a second investigation into whether people who first came upon the body may have, quote, manipulated it. Certain actions were taken by the people who discovered the body of Valerie Leblanc, so there is a second investigation to the one of murder, said Gatineau Police spokesman Sergeant Jean-Paul Lemay. Lemay went on to say that there were 4 suspects in the second investigation, which also included allegations of obstructing the homicide investigation. He said the people involved in the second investigation were not believed to be involved in the death of Leblanc. According to Lemay, the 4 suspects may have potentially compromised the homicide investigation. Eventually, police revealed that the 4 suspects were, as you've probably guessed, teenagers who told police they were walking through the park when they saw smoke rising from an off-trail area. They went to investigate and they discovered Leblanc's body with evidence of burns and other signs of violence. The teens later told police that they did not realize the body was real. Just parking lot, that one. So they returned to class. Eventually they decided something was wrong and they phoned police. The press reported that Leblanc and her boyfriend had recently broken up and that they were seen entering the woods together that Tuesday morning. Parking lot, that as well. But police, while confirming the split between the couple, said the investigators met with the boyfriend and that he was not considered a suspect. Leblanc was a first-year student at the Cégep College, according to police. She died on the first day of school of the fall semester. 2 months later, the trail from Valerie Leblanc's murder goes cold. Valerie's mother holds a press conference pleading for the public's help. We want the police officers to find who is responsible for this horrible murder and make sure the person is arrested and convicted, she says. Gatineau police say they still have no suspects, but they do release a sketch of a man described as an, quote, important witness in the slaying who was seen wearing a black hat. They say there have been more than 500 tips related to the homicide investigation and repeat their call for more information. The force also offers a $10,000 reward for information related to the case. The important witness is described as a white man in his 20s, about 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, with a chubby face, short black hair, no facial hair, and a pot belly. He is French-speaking. He also had a summer tan with a particular olive complexion. He has a pointy nose and walks with a limp. He may have been riding a bicycle. The bicycle is described as a mountain bike with straight handlebars. Police say the bike appears to be a lower-end model that had mountain or hybrid tires. Yeah, it's like the one-armed man or something. So witness statements go on to say he's wearing an open black nylon jacket along with a black t-shirt with a red and gold logo, a black cap, and black wrinkled pants. This goes on and on. He was walking decisively and looked worried. Now later, other witnesses contradict this. They claim the man was not wearing a black hat, but of course by this time, police had already released the composite photo showing the man with the black hat. The Gatineau police declared they had still no suspects, but their chief defended the investigation, saying they did not believe the case should be turned over to the more experienced provincial police force, who is, you guessed it, the Sûreté de Québec. By December 2011, months later, with still no progress on the murder investigation, the Office of the Crown Attorney announces that no charges will be laid in the matter of the second investigation, the tampering with Valerie Leblanc's body. The police reveal that the original 4 teenagers, they were suspected to have tampered with the murder scene. However, 3 of them were cleared in September, with the 4th person cleared in December. Officials say there is no discrepancy as to whether or not the body was tampered with, but they will not move forward with charges based on the evidence. It's never quite clear what exactly the nature of the body tampering was, but many assume it was the setting of the corpse on fire. The other possibility is that, of course, they broke the legs, which is just a gruesome thing. And the spokesman for the police says, of course they touched the body, but we cannot say how. So, I mean, there it is. All the truth completely wrapped in a wet blanket. On the 1-year anniversary of the death of Valerie Leblanc, a memorial that had been erected along the bike path where she was found is vandalized. Valerie's grandmother says she believes the person who desecrated the memorial could be linked to the killing. They say a murderer or some murderers always come back to the site of their act, said Huguette Leblanc. It could be that, too. It's starting to affect them inside and in their head. Not a bad theory. So what happened is exactly about 4 p.m., so 1 year to the hour that his granddaughter's body was discovered, Bert Leblanc, the grandfather, he goes to visit this memorial site and discovers it had been trashed. It was a cross erected and it was broken. A commemorative a plaque had been cracked. A picture of Valerie the face had been scratched out, and there was a crucifix with a wolf's head on it that apparently had been buried and then unearthed. He also found cases of beer and broken bottles scattered around the memorial site. Bert, this is not unusual, right? Deanne Deary's gravesite has been repeatedly vandalized. The little photo of her at the top of the marker has been scratched off. I don't know why people do this. Well, I'd venture a theory right now. What do both cases have in common? Young people. That's what I'd say. The Valerie Leblanc case and the Deanne Deary case from 1975, they are not connected, but what they have in common are very young people. Anyway, Bert Leblanc, he shared his experience with the Gatineau police, but they said it was too early in the investigation to draw any possible links between the vandalism and the murder. Too early? It's only been a year. I mean, what are you saying? Now, it just, given that you had no leads and no suspects, wouldn't you take the vandalism a little more seriously? I mean, just for the sake of the family, wouldn't you, at the very least, play along, give the appearance that you were taking it seriously and not dismissing the incident outright? Given how much the family had suffered, given that you had already had the evidence of bodily tampering conducted by teenagers, but you threw that out, given that your lack of experience had already been called into question, wouldn't you, as the investigating force, start to focus the investigation closer to home and stop pinning your hopes on some phantom important witness who may or may not even exist, a figment who may have been created by those same teenagers to throw the focus of the investigation in a direction other than the Cégep campus in Hull? It didn't take long for the Valerie Leblanc investigation to devolve into the circus it was destined to become. Right? This is what happens when you have a police force that is completely out of their depth with criminal matters. They become prey to outside elements that, with the best intentions, manage to complicate and confuse things even further and turn it into a complete shit show. Enter Claude Poirier. In the fall of 2013, the second anniversary of Valerie Leblanc's murder, Claude Poirier hosts a television call-in show on Quebec's TVA television station. On the TVA program, an anonymous caller claimed Leblanc's killer committed suicide a month after the 18-year-old's mutilated and burned body was found behind the Cégep campus in August 2011. This caller to Claude Poirier's show claimed to be a resident of Gatineau, said he received his information from an unnamed, recently retired police officer. "We must come to an end with this atrocity here," he told TV host Poirier. "I hold information that will confirm that we will never find the perpetrator of Valerie Leblanc, because the individual has committed suicide not long after in Gatineau Park." Police quickly qualify this information as unfounded. Claude Poirier confirms that he receives lots of information on the Leblanc case. "I receive information on my voicemail, on my site, on my pager. I passed everything on to 2 lieutenants. Still, I received extremely plausible things." Valerie Leblanc's grandmother, Huguette, says the one thing that seems to make common sense, that this assertion is difficult to believe. And she says, "I'm glad people are still talking about it, but I don't believe it. I doubt a police officer would talk like that. If it was true, there would be proof. We'd already know about it. My feeling is people like to say things to get attention." Absolutely the God Jesus truth. 9 years later, and the police still hadn't gotten very far with the Valerie Leblanc murder investigation. Valerie's mother, she does annual press conferences to try and keep the case alive, as she should, as she must. "I just miss her," she says, "and every year that goes on, it's like we're going through that again. It's bringing me down so much." Gatineau police continue to state that they would like to speak with the male witness from their issued sketch. "We're still at the point where we would like to meet with the important witness in our case," says Jean-Paul Lemay of the Gatineau Police Service. This is 9 years later. Then by 2020, Claude Poirier has conducted his own investigation. So now we have parallel investigations going on in hopes of shedding light on the homicide through his program Poirier Enquête. And the Poirier problem is that he's just like Jack Webb on Dragnet, right? This is just another Quebecois TV product. There's no objective distance. He's right. Claude is right in the police's pocket and the media's pocket, where he wants to be. He's getting paid. But there's the added danger of when Claude Poirier goes rogue, like he did with the anonymous caller in this 2013 television program, as he did in 1997 with the disappearance of Cédric Provencher, sending what should have been a contained investigation to all parts of the province and to other provinces outright.
En août 2011, le corps d'une jeune femme est découvert dans un boisé de Gatineau.
Ouais, c'est drette là qu'elle était dans ce sens-là.
Le meurtrier de Valérie Leblanc court toujours.
Poirier Enquête, mercredi 21h, sur Historia.
I suspect that police already know this, but have elected to put up a front. The best suspect is not some important witness who may or may not exist. The best suspect in the Valerie Leblanc case, and I feel this is something very different from the Catherine Daviau case is in fact someone closely associated with her at the Cégep campus in Hull. Leblanc's coroner's report is not very telling, but it does reveal this. Mademoiselle Leblanc had gone to the wooded area behind the Cégep, which is very popular with students, with a friend around 1 p.m. The friend in question left the woods some 30 minutes later. Other students found Mademoiselle Leblanc there dead and made a call to 911 at around 3:55 p.m. We know from press reports that the friend is Valerie's boyfriend, with whom she had recently broken up. 2 go in, 1 comes out. And there's an approximate 2.5-hour window in which the body tampering could have occurred. I would guess that the boyfriend is the police's prime suspect. There simply are no witnesses or none ready to tell what they know, and the boyfriend hasn't ever broken. He won't confess. If you're looking for more in-depth information on the Valerie Leblanc case, you should check out the podcast Synthesis, produced by Cube Radio, which is yet another Quebecor offering, I must admit. But Synthesis is very good. It's the brainchild of Boris Prou and Julien Morissette. And they've now produced 2 series on unsolved murders in Quebec, one on Leblanc, and the second series on the death of Louis Chaput, a 52-year-old Quebec woman whose body was found in 2001 at Pinkham Notch in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. The Synthesis podcasts for a time were really kind of difficult to find, but they've recently been posted on Apple Podcasts, and I've put a link on the website, teresalore.com. Morissette and Prou's work it's excellent. It's definitely worth checking out. Yes, these are the guys I've referred to in the past on this program in other lights. But for today, we're just talking about Synthesis. It's really good. The only problem with Synthesis is it's all in French, so you need to brush up on your parlez-vous.
J'ai grandi ici à Gatineau, où mon père était coroner. J'ai toujours été fasciné par les récits des morts suspectes dans la région. J'ai pas suivi ses traces. Je suis plutôt devenu réalisateur et animateur. Mais s'il y a une chose que mon père m'a transmise, c'est la curiosité de comprendre ce qui se passe sur une scène de crime. Parmi toutes ces histoires tragiques, il y en a une qui m'habite depuis trop longtemps. Celle de Valérie Leblanc.
Louis Chaput was from Sherbrooke. And this is a good transition. Well, it's as good a transition as you're going to get for our next segment. Now, those that know me have already guessed where this is all leading to. Why I chose to tell these stories at this particular point in time. For years, I've been asked to cover the cases of Daviau and Leblanc, and I've never been able to find the right hook or the right angle. It's one thing for some teenagers to mistake a burnt body for a mannequin. They're kids. They're not professional investigators. In the book, Wish You Were Here, we even begin the book with the discovery of the body and how a muskrat trapper found the body and thought it was a mannequin. That's a true story. That really happened with Robert Ride. But we also recognized that thinking the victim is a mannequin is kind of like an old true crime trope, because it always seems that true crime stories start that way, with an old cliche, and Wish You Were Here starts that way very intentionally. We wanted to start with something very, very familiar, very much within the true crime arena, to kind of place it and say, okay, where you are, and then to go in very, very different direction, telling the story of the murders of 5 women from Quebec and then later 3 women from Calgary. So the mannequin. So imagine my surprise a few weeks ago when police and firefighters from the city of Sherbrooke, Quebec, literally mistook a burning body for a mannequin and then collectively made the decision to dispose of said mannequin in a nearby dumpster. I've posted quite a bit on this story on social media because I cannot believe it, but I'll just tell I would suspect that anyone in Quebec knows the story. Listeners in the United States and the UK, Australia, etc. are not familiar with this. So I'm just going to tell it because it's unbelievable. On the morning of July 23rd, 2021, so this is like a month ago, police and firefighters responded to a call made by employees on a break from the AMF factory in southern Sherbrooke. The workers said they saw someone set fire to a mannequin in a wooded area at the corner of Rue Cabana and Roy. According to the Sherbrooke police chief, Danny McConnell, the body was initially believed to be a silicone dummy. After discussions between police and firefighters, it was decided the best way to dispose of the mannequin was to put it into a dumpster behind the police station. So I want you to visualize this, okay? The leaders of Sherbrooke, the city of Sherbrooke, Quebec, one of the largest cities in the province of Quebec, behind Montreal, Quebec City, Trois-Rivières, then I guess Sherbrooke. The leaders of public safety are standing around this said mannequin and making this decision. 4 hours later, a man reported the disappearance of his partner. Police tracked her cell phone and found her vehicle near the scene of the fire. The woman's description matched that of the supposed mannequin. Police, noting the coincidence, decided at 6:30 p.m. to check the dumpster and discovered the mannequin was... and the rest, writes itself. According to CTV News, the coroner's office, Crown, and the Independent Bureau of Investigators all made the decision to look into this situation. And currently, police are investigating it as a suspicious death. There it is, suspicious death. In a news conference, McConnell offered his condolences to the woman's family, We are obviously sorry for this incident, and we assure you the family will be advised throughout this investigation, he said. Sherbrooke Fire Chief Stéphane Simoneau said many firefighters were shocked by the discovery, and he is concerned about the psychological toll the situation may cause, adding that he is personally taking on the responsibility to determine what exactly occurred. Well, we're going to hold him to that. And he says, we will shine a light on these events over the next few weeks. So on the subject of shining a light, I find it interesting that it appears that only a dark blanket has been thrown over the matter in the preceding weeks. From what I can tell, most of the reporting from the initial week of this incident, from July 22nd, when the body was discovered, to the following week, has been wiped from the internet. And this is the majority of coverage. It only picks up a week later on July 29th from the point of the police apology. And what has been dropped is that the AMF workers say they saw someone light a body on fire. In later news coverage, the reporting only says police responded to a body on fire, not that somebody was lighting it. And you can hear that as clear as day on this CTV report that I'll play
6 days
now.
later, written on one of the cards, "To my sister, I will never forget you." A woman is dead, but for almost an entire day, police believed her body was a mannequin that had been set on fire.
Vers 10h04.
Sherbrooke's police chief Danny McConnell is giving few details on what happened.
Quelqu'un est venu brûler un mannequin.
Workers on break at this factory called 911 saying they saw someone set fire to a mannequin. Police say when they arrived, the fire was out and all that remained was what they took.
The story that has emerged is that a woman in her 60s appears to have taken her own life. But there's no telling that is actually what occurred. And we've seen this before, the burning of a victim or a crime scene to obfuscate the murder. It's most notably in the case of Diane Thibault, but also we just talked about the Catherine Daviau case, and possibly it's an element in the Valerie Leblanc case. And just a full disclosure, just so you know what I'm getting at, the only thing connecting the Daviau and Leblanc cases is the burning of the victims. Apart from that, I see little in common with the dossiers. I do not feel that they're connected at all. Some people have tried to connect them, and all I would say about that is you can't play true crime hopscotch with evidence. You cannot cherry pick facts and put together the facts that prove your theory while blatantly ignoring the facts that disprove it. So there's no connection there. The only connection here is my attempt to talk about the burning of 3 bodies in 3 very separate cases. Period. End story. So far from shining a light, the police have maintained stone silence since the public apology 3 weeks ago. As was reported in the French language paper Le Soleil, silence is the watchword in the file. That's the headline. And here I'll read from this August 3rd article. And it appears to be the last word on the matter for the time being. An investigation by the coroner's office is underway, says Jake LaMotta Granado, responsible for the communications and media relations. Mr. Richard Drapeau is responsible for this file and no comments will be made before the publication of the report, he adds. 10 days after the tragedy, the same questions as last week therefore remain unanswered. The identity of the victim remains unknown, in addition to the circumstances of their death. All say they are waiting for the coroner's report before commenting further on the tragedy. According to the Bureau du Coroner du Québec, in 2018-2019, the average time to produce this type of report was 11 months. That's from the newspaper Le Soleil. So 11 months. We're going to apparently, and I just checked before starting to record this. There's still no word on the Sherbrooke mannequin case. And I find it hard to believe that we're going to have to wait another 10 months before anyone is willing to step up and comment on this matter. I think they're waiting for us to forget about it. On the matter of the timing of the release of coroner information, it's worth noting it took over a year for the coroner to produce the report for Valerie Leblanc. So that's in line with what this coroner is saying. It normally takes 11 months. But in the matter of Catherine Daviau's death, it took over 2 years. And as we've seen in a couple of episodes before with the murder of Siasi Tuligak, the coroner waited 21 months. You know how this plays out. I'm eagerly awaiting the part in this story when we're officially told to just go away and fuck off, right? Somebody's going to come forward and say, this is a local matter. Please give our community time to heal. That's where we're headed. That's definitely where we're headed with this matter. It's going to be covered up. It's going to be obfuscated. Worse than if they burned the body. The body was burned. It was the first obfuscation, and then there's going to be a second one, a second covering by the police and the media, who's complacent in these things, with the exception of the brave Le Soleil. We'll see if they keep this up. I doubt it. I doubt we'll ever get to the bottom of this, because we never do. It's Quebec. That's the way it is. Nevertheless, although they try to gaslight you, it's very dangerous to forget. This is who killed Teresa. A few thoughts going out. Number one, I should probably talk about the music more often on the podcast, because I got such a response last time to the music of Lisa LeBlanc. So many people wrote wanting to know who she was and where they could find her music. And at one time somebody suggested to me, said, John, you should start a podcast about pop music and pop culture. And I responded, I thought this podcast was about pop music and pop culture. I just don't always talk about it. It's just there in the background. But nevertheless, and also sometimes the subject matter is so serious that it seems really intrusive to then kind of like enter and say, and the music this week, it doesn't seem appropriate, so I don't do it, but maybe we'll talk about that later. If you like the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Music, iTunes. That would help. You can follow us on social media. If you go to the website, teresalore.com, TheresaLore.com, teresalore.com, you can find your entry ramps to Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all of those things. Follow us, comment. I love the comments. I was not able to get to a number of people were trying to contact me this week. It's been a very, very busy week with things. There's a lot going on, and none of which I can really talk about.
There's my baby waving her handkerchief down. Ah, yeah, stand up when I hear that sound.
That's the show. I got a split. This is Who Killed Teresa. I'm your host, John Allure. Have yourselves a great, great day.
Bring my baby back.